Everyone in the restaurant lowered their eyes when the Korean Mafia boss spoke. But nobody expected the black waitress he insulted to answer him in the one language he thought she would never understand. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments below, and if you believe dignity is stronger than power, hit like and subscribe. Now, back to Nina Williams. The Golden Seoul restaurant was known as one of the most exclusive Korean restaurants in New York. A place where wealthy businessmen made deals. A place where powerful people came to be respected. And a place where everyone knew one important rule. Never upset Adrian Park, the Korean Mafia boss. His name alone was enough to change the atmosphere of an entire room. When Adrian Park entered, conversations stopped. Servers stood straighter. Guests lowered their voices. Not because he demanded attention, because his presence created it. He walked through the restaurant wearing a perfectly tailored black suit, his tattoos slightly visible along his neck and hands. His expression was calm, cold, unreadable. A man who had spent years building an empire where fear was often more valuable than loyalty. Behind him, 2 security guards followed quietly. Everyone knew who he was. Everyone knew what he represented. Power, money, danger. But that evening, nobody expected the one person he would notice would be someone everyone else ignored. Nina Williams, a black waitress who had worked at the restaurant for nearly 2 years. She was polite, hardworking, always the person who stayed late when others left. The kind of employee customers rarely remembered. But Nina had something most people never noticed. She listened, she observed, and she understood more than anyone realized. That night, she was serving Adrian's table. Everything was going normally until a small mistake happened. A dish arrived later than expected. Something simple. Something that could have been fixed with a few words. But Adrian Park was not used to waiting. His eyes moved toward Nina. The entire restaurant became quiet. You call this service? His voice was calm, but everyone felt the weight behind it. Nina stood. Still. I apologize, sir. I'll fix it immediately. But Adrian continued. He switched to Korean. A language he often used when he did not want others to understand. You should be more careful. People like you should know your place. The words were sharp. The kind of words that could make someone feel small. Around the restaurant, people looked away. Nobody wanted to become involved. Because this was Adrian Park. A man who was never challenged. A man who was always obeyed. Nina lowered her eyes for a moment. Not because she was afraid. Because she was choosing her response. She had spent years learning that reacting with anger only gave powerful people more control. So she took a breath. Then she looked directly at him. And something unexpected happened. She answered him in Korean. Perfect Korean. The entire restaurant froze. Adrian's expression changed. For the first time that night, he looked surprised. Because the waitress he thought understood nothing, had understood every single word. Nina calmly placed the dish on the table. Then she said 3 words. Only 3. But the moment those words left her mouth, the entire restaurant went silent. The guests stopped eating. The servers stopped moving. Even Adrian Park's expression changed. Because those 3 words were not an insult. They were something much more powerful. Something connected to a memory he thought nobody else knew. And for the first time in years, the Korean Mafia boss had no answer. The woman everyone ignored had just said something that made the most feared man in the room freeze. And nobody understood why. Not even Adrian Park himself. Everyone thought the black waitress had embarrassed herself in front of the Korean Mafia boss. But they were about to discover that she was the only person in the restaurant who truly understood him. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments below. And if you believe respect is earned through character, hit like and subscribe. Now, back to Nina Williams. The Golden Seoul restaurant had never been this quiet. Not because the guests were afraid of a mistake. Not because the food had stopped arriving. But because everyone was trying to understand what had just happened. 3 words. That was all Nina Williams said. 3 simple words in Korean. Yet they completely changed the atmosphere of the room. Adrian Park, the man who had made powerful people nervous for years, was suddenly silent. And nobody understood why. The other servers exchanged confused looks. The guests whispered quietly. How does she know Korean? Who taught her that? She's just a waitress. But Nina did not react to their attention. She simply stood there calmly. Because she knew something they did not. The most powerful people were often the ones carrying the deepest wounds. And Adrian Park was no different. Years before he became a feared mafia boss, Adrian was just a son trying to make his father proud. But that person had disappeared somewhere along the way. The world had changed him. Power changed him. Pain changed him. And Nina had unknowingly touched a memory he had spent years burying. Adrian looked at her carefully. Where did you learn those words? His voice was quieter now. Different. Not angry. Curious. Nina looked at him. My grandmother taught me. The answer surprised him. Because those words were not ordinary Korean. They were old. Personal. A phrase passed down in his family. A phrase his father used to say. Adrian's expression changed slightly. The first crack in the perfect mask he showed the world. You know what you just said? Nina nodded. Yes. And you know who says that? She paused, then answered honestly. Someone who remembers what matters. The restaurant became silent again. Because Nina was not defending herself. She was not trying to embarrass him. She was simply telling the truth. And somehow, that made Adrian uncomfortable. Because anger was easy. Disrespect was easy. But kindness after humiliation was something he did not understand. The manager quickly approached. Mr. Park, I apologize. This will never happen again. Everyone expected Adrian to accept the apology. To leave. To punish someone. That was what powerful men did. But Adrian did not move. His eyes remained on Nina. For years, people either feared him or wanted something from him. Nobody looked at him and reminded him of who he used to be. Nobody mentioned his father. Nobody reminded him of the values he had abandoned. Until now. You knew who I was before tonight? Adrian asked. Nina shook her head. No, then why weren't you afraid? She looked at him calmly. Because a person's title doesn't tell me who they really are. The words landed harder than any insult. The entire restaurant watched. The same woman who had been humiliated moments earlier was now standing with more confidence than anyone else in the room. And Adrian Park realized something uncomfortable. She was not challenging his power. She was challenging the person he had become. Later that night, Adrian sat alone in his private office. The restaurant incident replayed in his mind. Not the mistake. Not the embarrassment. The 3 words. The words his father once spoke. Words that reminded him of a time before fear controlled his life. For the first time in years, Adrian wondered something he had never allowed himself to ask. What if the man everyone feared was not the man he was meant to become? And somewhere across the city, Nina Williams continued her normal life. Not knowing that 3 words she spoke in a restaurant had reached the one place nobody else could reach. The memory of Adrian Park's lost humanity. Everyone in the restaurant thought the waitress had embarrassed the mafia boss, but they didn't realize she had just reminded him of the man he used to be. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments below, and if you believe true respect comes from character, hit like and subscribe. Now, back to Nina Williams. The next morning, the Golden Soul restaurant was still talking about what happened. Everyone had a different version of the story. Some people said Nina Williams was brave. Some said she was reckless. Others simply could not understand how a waitress had made Adrian Park speechless. Because that had never happened before. Adrian Park was known as a man who controlled every situation. A man who always had the final word. A man who made others lower their voices when he entered a room. But last night, a waitress had looked him in the eyes and spoken words that no one else dared to say. And the strangest part was not that she spoke Korean. It was what she said. Those 3 words were not random. They carried a meaning only a few people in Adrian's life would understand. A memory. A lesson. A reminder. Inside his private office, Adrian sat alone. The city moved below his window, but he barely noticed. His mind kept returning to Nina's voice. Calm. Respectful. Certain. He had expected fear. He had expected an apology. He had expected her to look away like everyone else. But she didn't. She looked at him like she saw something he had spent years hiding. Not a mafia boss. Not a powerful man. A person. That bothered him. Because Adrian Park knew how to deal with enemies. He knew how to handle betrayal. He knew how to make people respect him. But he did not know what to do with someone who refused to fear him. Later that day, Adrian returned to the restaurant. The moment he entered, the atmosphere changed. The staff became nervous. Customers became quiet. Everyone remembered what happened the night before. Nina was carrying a tray when she saw him. For a moment, she stopped. Not because she was afraid. Because she wondered why he had returned. Adrian walked toward her. You knew those words were important. It was not a question. Nina placed the tray down. Yes. Where did you hear them? She hesitated. Then answered honestly. My grandmother. Adrian studied her. Your grandmother knew my father's words? Nina looked surprised. Your father? That reaction caught him off guard. Because it meant something. She was not using information to impress him. She genuinely did not know. Adrian became silent. For years, those words had belonged only to his family. His father used to say them whenever Adrian was angry, whenever he believed power was the answer. Remember who you are. Simple words. But they carried a meaning Adrian had forgotten. His father believed a person's value was not measured by how many people feared them. He believed strength came from protecting others. Somewhere along the way, Adrian lost that lesson. The world had taught him something different. Power was everything. Trust was dangerous. Kindness was weakness. But Nina had stood in front of him and proven the opposite. You weren't afraid of me, Adrian said. Nina looked at him. No, why? She thought for a moment, then answered, because fear is not respect. The words were quiet, but they hit harder than anything he expected. The restaurant became still, because everyone heard it. The woman who had been insulted the night before was now teaching the most feared man in the room a lesson about respect. Adrian looked around. For the first time, he noticed something. Everyone in the restaurant was afraid of him, but nobody respected him. Not truly. They respected his power, not the person behind it. And that realization followed him long after he left. That night, Adrian opened an old box hidden in his home. Inside was a photograph of his father, a man who smiled easily, a man who believed kindness was not a weakness. Adrian stared at the picture, and for the first time in years, he wondered if the woman everyone overlooked had just shown him the truth everyone else was too afraid to say. The room went silent, because the mafia boss who never apologized had finally started questioning himself. Everyone thought the Korean Mafia Boss returned to the restaurant to punish the waitress, but nobody expected him to uncover the truth about the woman who challenged his pride. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments below, and if you believe respect is earned through humility, hit like and subscribe. Now, back to Adrian Park and Nina Williams. After that night, Adrian Park could not forget Nina Williams. Not because she embarrassed him, not because she challenged him, but because she reminded him of something he thought he had lost forever. His father's voice. For years, Adrian had buried every memory connected to his past. The lessons, the kindness, the person he used to be, because those things did not fit the world he lived in anymore. The mafia world rewarded strength. It rewarded control. It rewarded fear. And Adrian had become exactly what that world demanded. But 3 words from a waitress had opened a door he thought was permanently closed. The next evening, Adrian returned to the Golden Soul restaurant. Everyone noticed. The same man who had left the restaurant in silence was now walking back through the same doors. The employees immediately became nervous. Some expected anger. Some expected revenge. Nobody expected him to approach Nina calmly. She was preparing another table when she saw him. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Tell me about your grandmother. Nina looked surprised. My grandmother? The woman who taught you those words. Nina slowly placed the plates down. She was Korean. Adrian remained silent. She lived in Seoul for many years before moving here. And how did she know those words? Nina hesitated. Because they were important to her. Adrian studied her expression. There was no arrogance. No attempt to gain attention. No hidden agenda. Only honesty. That confused him. Because Adrian Park had spent his entire life believing everyone had a reason for everything they did. Everyone wanted something. Everyone had a price. But Nina seemed different. You knew who I was after you answered me, Adrian said. Nina shook her head. No, you weren't afraid? She looked at him. Should I have been? The question caught him off guard. Because nobody had ever questioned fear itself. They simply accepted it. Nina continued. Fear can make people obey you. A pause. But it cannot make them respect you. The restaurant became quiet. The same words she had spoken before. But this time, Adrian listened. Really listened. Because deep down, he knew she was right. People followed his orders. They respected his influence. They avoided his anger. But how many people actually respected him? Not the mafia boss. Not the reputation. Him. That night, Adrian stayed longer than usual. He watched Nina work. He noticed things he had ignored before. The way she helped older customers. The way she apologized even when mistakes were not hers. The way she treated every person with the same respect. No matter their status. No matter their wealth. She gave people something Adrian had spent years taking away. a sense of dignity. Later, Adrian met with his closest associate. You know that waitress? The man looked confused. Nina Williams? Yes. She's just a server. Adrian looked at him. The words sounded different now. Just a server. Just a waitress. Just someone people overlooked. But Adrian was beginning to understand something. The world often ignored the people who carried the most value. And Nina had more strength than many powerful men he knew. Before leaving, Adrian looked back at the restaurant. Nina was cleaning a table. No cameras. No audience. No reason to pretend. Just quietly doing her job. And for the first time in years, Adrian Park respected someone who had nothing to gain from him. But he still did not know the truth. The 3 words Nina spoke were not the only connection between them, because her grandmother had not learned those words by accident. And the secret behind them was about to reveal a past Adrian Park never knew existed. The mafia boss thought the waitress only knew 3 words, but he was about to discover she knew the one secret that could change how he saw himself forever. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments below. And if you believe the truth can be more powerful than authority, hit like and subscribe. Now, back to Adrian Park and Nina Williams. For years, Adrian Park believed he knew everything about his own story. He knew the moment he lost his father. He knew the moment he stopped trusting people. He knew the moment he decided kindness was a weakness he could no longer afford. But what he did not know was that someone else had been carrying a piece of his past all along. Nina Williams. After their conversation at the restaurant, Adrian could not stop thinking about her. Not because she challenged him, not because she embarrassed him, but because she made him remember something he had buried. Honor. A word his father repeated throughout his childhood. A word Adrian once believed in. Before the world changed him. Before power became his only protection. One evening, Adrian invited Nina to speak privately. Not at the restaurant. Not in front of employees. But in a quiet room where there were no witnesses. Nina walked in carefully. She knew who Adrian Park was. She knew the stories, the rumors, the reputation. But she also knew something most people never discovered. The man behind the name. Where did your grandmother learn those words? Adrian asked. Nina looked at him. She never told me everything. Adrian's expression tightened. What did she tell you? Nina was quiet for a moment. Then she answered. She told me they came from a man who believed power should protect people, not control them. The room became silent, because Adrian knew exactly who that man was. His father, the one person who never looked at him as a weapon, the one person who believed Adrian could become something better. Your grandmother knew my father? Nina nodded. Many years ago. Adrian stepped closer. How? Nina hesitated. My grandmother worked with a Korean community center when she was younger. A pause. She met your father there. For the first time in years, Adrian looked genuinely surprised. Because his father's life before the mafia had always been a mystery. A chapter nobody talked about. A part of his family history that disappeared after his death. And now, a waitress was standing in front of him holding a piece of that forgotten past. You never used this information against me, Adrian said. Nina looked confused. Why would I? Because most people would. Her expression softened. Maybe that's the problem. Adrian looked at her. What? Maybe you've spent so long expecting people to hurt you that you forgot some people just want to do the right thing. The word stayed with him. Because Adrian Park had built his entire life around one belief. Everyone had an intention. Everyone wanted something. Everyone could betray you. But Nina had proven otherwise. She had the chance to humiliate him. She had the chance to expose him. She had the chance to make the powerful man who insulted her look weak. But she chose dignity instead. Later that night, Adrian opened an old storage box at his home. Inside were photographs he had not looked at in years. One picture showed him as a child beside his father. A younger Adrian. A happier Adrian. A person before the walls were built. He looked at the photograph for a long time. And for the first time, he wondered if the man he became was truly the man he was meant to be. Meanwhile, Nina returned to the restaurant as usual. She did not expect anything. She did not expect praise. She did not expect recognition. She simply continued doing her job. And that was what surprised Adrian the most. She did not want his power. She did not want his money. She only wanted to be treated with respect. And somehow, that made her the strongest person he had ever met. But Adrian did not know one thing yet. The truth about his father was not the only secret connected to Nina. And when that secret was finally revealed, The entire world around Adrian Park would change. The mafia boss thought he was uncovering the waitress's secret, but he was about to discover that her words had uncovered the part of himself he had hidden for years. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments below. And if you believe humility can change even the most powerful people, hit like and subscribe. Now, back to Adrian Park and Nina Williams. After his conversation with Nina, Adrian Park started seeing the world differently. Not completely, not overnight, but enough for him to notice things he had ignored before. The people who lowered their eyes when he entered a room. The employees who became nervous when he spoke. The silence that followed his presence. For years, Adrian believed that silence meant respect. But Nina had shown him something uncomfortable. Sometimes silence was not respect. Sometimes it was fear. And fear was something Adrian had spent his entire life creating. One afternoon, Adrian returned to the Golden Seoul restaurant without security. The employees immediately noticed. The same man who once arrived surrounded by guards was now standing alone. Nina looked surprised. You came back. Adrian nodded. I wanted to ask you something. She waited. Your grandmother, he paused. Did she ever talk about my father? Nina looked at him carefully. Yes. Adrian's expression changed. What did she say? Nina placed a glass of water on the table. She said he was different from most powerful people. Adrian remained silent. He treated everyone with respect. The words were simple, but they carried weight. Because Adrian remembered. Before the money. Before the influence. Before the empire. His father was a man who believed every person deserved dignity. A man who would sit with restaurant workers. A man who thanked people others ignored. And Adrian had forgotten all of that. He helped my grandmother when she first came to America, Nina continued. He gave her a chance when nobody else would. Adrian looked away. Because that sounded exactly like his father. The same man who taught him that power meant responsibility, not control. That evening, Adrian visited the old family home. A place he rarely returned to. Dust covered the furniture. The rooms were quiet. But the memories remained. He found an old notebook belonging to his father. Inside were handwritten notes, business ideas, personal thoughts, and one sentence that stopped Adrian completely. Never become so powerful that you forget how to be human. The room went silent. Because those words felt like they had been written for him. Not the young Adrian. The man he had become. A man who built an empire but lost the person his father wanted him to be. Meanwhile, Nina continued working at the restaurant. She did not know Adrian was searching through his past. She did not know she had changed something inside him. She simply believed people deserved respect. That was who she was. And that was why Adrian could not ignore her. Most people approached him because of his power. Nina approached him because she saw a person. Not a title. Not a reputation. Not a threat. A person. A few days later, Adrian returned to the restaurant again. This time, something was different. He did not sit at the most expensive table. He did not demand special treatment. He simply waited. The employees watched carefully. Because nobody had ever seen Adrian Park wait for anything. When Nina approached, he looked at her. I owe you an apology. The words surprised everyone nearby. Because Adrian Park did not apologize. Not publicly. Not privately. Not ever. Nina looked at him. For what? For believing your position made you less important. The restaurant became quiet. Because the most powerful man in the room had finally admitted something everyone else refused to say. He was wrong. And that moment changed the way people saw him. But somewhere outside the restaurant, someone else was watching. Someone who did not care about Adrian's change. Someone who saw Nina as the reason the mafia boss was becoming weaker. And they were ready to remind Adrian Park why he had stopped trusting people in the first place. The mafia boss thought apologizing would end the story, but he never realized that the woman he underestimated was about to reveal the truth that could change his entire legacy. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments below. And if you believe humility is the beginning of true respect, hit like and subscribe. Now, back to Adrian Park and Nina Williams. After Adrian Park apologized at the Golden Seoul restaurant, something changed. Not outside. The world still saw him the same way. A powerful mafia boss. A dangerous businessman. A man who controlled everything around him. But inside his own mind, something was different. For the first time in years, Adrian questioned the person he had become. And Nina Williams was the reason. She never tried to defeat him. She never tried to embarrass him. She simply reminded him of something he had forgotten. Humanity. But change was never easy for someone like Adrian. Because power created enemies. And enemies noticed weakness. Especially when that weakness was something as simple as caring. One evening, Adrian met with his closest associates. The atmosphere was tense. Usually, these meetings were about business, territory, deals, competition. But this time, something else was discussed. Nina Williams. She's becoming important to you, one of his associates said. Adrian looked up. The room became quiet. Because everyone knew that was dangerous. In Adrian's world, people close to you became targets. He had spent years making sure nobody mattered enough to hurt him. But now there was someone who did. And everyone could see it. She is not involved in my world, Adrian said. But even he knew those words were not completely true. Because Nina had already changed his world. Meanwhile, Nina continued working at the restaurant. She did not act differently. She did not use Adrian's attention to gain anything. She still arrived early. Still helped her coworkers. Still treated every customer with respect. That was what confused Adrian the most. Many people changed when they discovered his identity. They became nervous. They became careful. They became interested. But Nina remained the same. Because she never cared about his power. She cared about his character. One afternoon, Adrian visited the restaurant again. This time, he noticed something he had never seen before. A customer was being rude to one of the younger servers. The situation reminded him of himself. The old version of himself. The man who believed having power meant having the right to make others feel small. Before anyone could respond, Adrian stepped forward. Apologize. The customer froze. Not because Adrian threatened him, but because of the calm authority in his voice. Everyone expected anger. Instead, they saw fairness. The restaurant became silent. Because the same man who once humiliated a waitress was now defending someone in the same position. Nina watched from behind the counter. And for the first time, she saw something different in Adrian. Not guilt. Growth. Later, Adrian approached her. You were right. Nina looked at him. About what? Respect. A pause. I thought people respected me because they feared me. He looked around the restaurant. But I was wrong. Nina said nothing. Because sometimes people needed to admit the truth themselves. Adrian continued. My father understood something I forgot. What was that? He looked at her. Power means nothing if you lose your humanity. The words were quiet, but they carried years of regret. For the first time, Nina saw the weight Adrian carried. Not the mafia boss. Not the man with influence. The son who lost his way. But just as Adrian began changing, the past he thought was buried started returning. A forgotten name. An old connection. A secret his father never revealed. And Nina Williams was connected to it. Because the 3 words she spoke that night were not a coincidence. They were. The beginning of a truth Adrian Park was never prepared to face. The truth about his father. The truth about his family. And the truth about the woman who changed him. The mafia boss thought his past was finally behind him. But the secret connected to the waitress was about to expose the man he had spent years pretending not to be. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments below. And if you believe true respect comes from humility, hit like and subscribe. Now, back to Adrian Park and Nina Williams. The news spread quickly. Not through the media, not through the streets, but through the people who witnessed it. Adrian Park had apologized. The same man who never admitted mistakes. The same man who made others apologize to him. Had finally lowered his pride. And everyone wanted to know why. But Adrian was not interested in what people thought. He was interested in the truth. Because every answer seemed to lead back to one person. Nina Williams. The waitress who spoke 3 words in Korean. The woman who reminded him of his father. The person who somehow knew a part of his family history that even he had forgotten. One evening, Adrian asked Nina to meet him again. This time, not as a customer. Not as a mafia boss. Just as a man searching for answers. I need to know everything your grandmother told you. Nina looked at him. Why? Because those words were important to my father. She remained quiet. Then she slowly reached into her bag. From inside, she pulled out an old envelope. Adrian immediately noticed the handwriting. His expression changed. Where did you get that? Nina looked at the envelope. My grandmother kept it for years. Adrian stepped closer. The handwriting belonged to his father. The man who had disappeared from his life before Adrian became the person everyone feared. His hands tightened slightly. Why does she have this? Nina answered softly. Because your father trusted her. The room became silent. Because Adrian spent years believing his father's world ended with his death. But now he was discovering something else. His father had left pieces of himself behind. Pieces that survived through people who remembered his kindness. Adrian opened the letter carefully. The words were simple, but they carried a weight he had not felt in years. His father wrote about respect, about responsibility, about never forgetting the people who stood beside you when you had nothing. And at the bottom of the letter was one final sentence. Power without compassion is just another form of weakness. Adrian stopped reading, because those words felt like a judgment. Not from Nina, not from anyone else. From the man who raised him. The man who believed Adrian could become better. For years, Adrian thought he honored his father by becoming powerful, by becoming untouchable, by making sure nobody could hurt him again. But now he wondered, had he actually become everything his father warned him not to be? Nina watched him quietly. She did not interrupt. She did not tell him what to do, because she understood something. People do not change because they are forced. They change when they finally see themselves clearly. Later that night, Adrian returned to the Golden Soul restaurant. But this time, something was different. He sat at a normal table. He greeted the employees. He thanked the servers. Small actions. Simple things. But for someone like Adrian Park, they meant everything. One of the younger waitresses looked surprised. Is he always like this? Nina smiled softly. No, she looked toward Adrian. But maybe he's learning. And she was right. Because Adrian was learning something the world never taught him. Being feared was easy. Being respected was harder. But earning respect without demanding it, that required something much stronger. Humility. However, not everyone was happy about Adrian's change. Some people benefited from the old Adrian. The angry one. The ruthless one. The man who never questioned himself. And now they saw Nina as the reason he was becoming different. A weakness. A problem. A person who needed to disappear. Because in their eyes, the waitress who changed the mafia boss had become the greatest threat to everything they built. Everyone thought the Black Waitress had changed the mafia boss, but they didn't know she was about to become the reason he finally faced the truth about himself. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments below, and if you believe dignity can change even the most powerful people, hit like and subscribe. Now, back to Adrian Park and Nina Williams. The Golden Soul restaurant was no longer the same. Not because the building changed. Not because the customers changed. But because one person changed the way everyone saw Adrian Park. Before Nina Williams entered his life, Adrian was a man people feared. A man whose name carried weight. A man who believed respect came from control. But now, people were starting to see something different. Not a weaker man. A better one. The same mafia boss who once humiliated a waitress was now the man who defended employees who had no power. The same man who never apologized was now willing to admit when he was wrong. And everyone wondered what caused such a change. The answer was simple. Nina. But not everyone was happy. Some people benefited from the old Adrian Park. The ruthless man. The angry man. The man who never questioned himself. One evening, Adrian received a message. A photograph. Nina leaving the restaurant. Nothing else. But he immediately understood. Someone was watching her. Someone wanted to remind him that caring about someone was dangerous. For years, Adrian protected himself by keeping everyone at a distance. No attachments. No weaknesses. No emotions. But Nina had changed that. And his enemies noticed. The next day, Adrian returned to the restaurant. But this time, he did not come to make demands. He came to protect. The employees immediately became nervous. They expected the old Adrian, the man who controlled every conversation. Instead, he walked directly toward Nina. We need to talk. Nina looked at him. About what? About the danger around you. She understood immediately. This is because of me? Adrian shook his head. No, a pause. This is because of me. The answer surprised her. Because for the first time, Adrian was not blaming someone else. He was accepting responsibility. I spent years thinking everyone close to me became a target, he said. And because of that, I pushed everyone away. Nina listened quietly. But maybe I was wrong. The words were difficult for him to say. Because Adrian Park was a man who admitted very little, especially about himself. You were never my weakness, he continued. Nina looked at him. You just reminded me I was still human. The restaurant became silent. Because everyone nearby heard those words. The same man who once believed power was everything was now admitting something much greater. Humanity mattered more. Later that evening, Adrian confronted the people trying to use Nina against him. But this time, he was different. He did not react with anger. He did not act out of pride. He acted with purpose, because Nina had taught him something important. Strength was not about making people afraid. Strength was about protecting what was right. Weeks passed, and the story of Adrian Park changed. People still respected his power, but now they respected something else too. His character. And Nina Williams was no longer seen as just a waitress. She was the woman who stood in front of the most feared man in the city and reminded him what respect truly meant. One evening, Adrian returned to the Golden Soul restaurant, the same place where everything began, the same place where he thought he had all the power. He looked around, at the employees, at the customers, at Nina, and he finally understood. The 3 words she spoke that night did not defeat him. They saved him. Because sometimes the person who challenges your pride is the person who helps you find yourself again. And that day, everyone remembered one truth. Respect is not taken through fear. It is earned through humility.